Buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. You made it. We've tried to make this super hard just to try and see whether we can lose some delegates. But hey, you're food bankers, so we're never going to lose you. So well done. Thank you, everybody. My name is Lindsay Boswell. I'm the interim chief executive at FEBA. I look forward to getting to know many of you. Some of you I've met in various bars in Berlin or in Rome or in various other countries where we have met before, as well as in the conference room. For the last 13 years, I have led the UK organization FairShare, but I no longer do so. Some housekeeping quickly. There is no fire alarm planned for today. So if it goes off, it's real. Behind you, there is an emergency exit. And to the front here, there is an emergency exit. Not that way, okay? You have probably worked out, this is two buildings that have been put together into one hotel. There are two reception areas. Doesn't matter which one you go out of. You cross the road and you assemble on the other side of the road. If you are at the far end, then you assemble at the very obvious pharmacy, the chemist's shop that is opposite. I'm sure we won't need any of that. What you will need is coffee. And we are doing things slightly differently this year. I'm going to make you panic because there are no coffee breaks in the program. So those of you of a Mediterranean nature, you will now be going, I'm leaving. I need my coffee. You may get a coffee at any time you want one from the machines outside, okay? Whether you are in this room or whether you are in one of the breakout rooms, if you feel that you need a coffee or you need a comfort break, just get up and go. Please, if I'm speaking, don't all get up and go at the same time. It happens too often, and it's not good for my sleep patterns, okay? If you need a comfort break, there are some toilets behind the screen in the coffee area, so literally just out here. I'm told there are some in that direction as well, but I don't know where they are. Mobiles. Please take lots of pictures. Please feel free that if I'm boring you, but not the other speakers, check your emails. But put them on silent, please. Now, if your phone goes off, the first person to say something to you this evening, you have to buy them a drink. Okay? So make sure, please, now your phone is on silent. I think I've just turned mine on. We're going to go straight into the program. Those of you who have hosted one of these events before will understand the amount of work and effort that goes into doing so, and particularly as the host country. So it's extremely appropriate that our first speaker this morning is the president of FEBA, our host, and I'd love to invite Mr. President Pedro Yoka to come up, and Pedro from the board to translate. Thank you very much, sir.
Hola, buenos días a todos. Nos sentimos realmente gratificados de que la Federación Europea de Bancos de Alimentos presidida por Jack, haya tenido la gentileza de darnos la oportunidad de ser anfitriones de este encuentro.
I'll try to translate, not literally, but I will try to translate. He says that as president of the Spanish Federation, we are really happy and grateful to you to give us the opportunity to host this event.
Bueno, yo considero que es muy importante que anualmente haya un encuentro de todas las federaciones europeas de Banco de Alimentos para compartir experiencias y buscar nuevas alternativas a las situaciones que estamos viviendo.
He thinks it's very important that once a year and less, all the food banks get together to share experiences and to look for new alternatives to the situation we are living.
Creo y valoro muchísimo el que seamos realistas, que sepamos que en Europa están coincidiendo una cantidad de condiciones adversas que más que nunca tenemos que estar ahí para ayudar a tantas personas viviendo situaciones muy precarias. No me quiero olvidar de nuestros compatriotas o hermanos, que son los ucranianos que están sufriendo la barbarie de la invasión de Rusia.
He thinks that in this situation, we've got to be realistic. There's been several crises which is making us as food banks more and more necessary. And especially, he doesn't want to forget what he says is our members or our people, people from Ukraine, which are feeling the invasion of Russia.
Creo que cuando terminemos esta jornada saldremos gratificados, fortalecidos y con la certeza de que con nuestra entrega y nuestra dedicación podremos atenuar todos esos impactos negativos.
He said that he expects and he's sure that at the end of these 2 days we'll go back stronger and with the knowing that we are able or we are in a better position to cope with all these type of things.
Por último, no quiero extenderme más, pero sí agradecer públicamente a nuestra majestad, su majestad la reina Sofía, que una vez más a los bancos de alimentos españoles nos da todo su apoyo, toda su entrega, su cariño, y ayer mismo creo que pudieron disfrutar de su presencia, que para nosotros bueno, es como un estandarte que marca el camino de lo que somos los bancos de alimentos españoles.
He says he doesn't want to talk much more, but once again he wants to thank to Her Majesty the Queen Sofia that once again gave us her support, and his for us is like a flag saying what we should do to help people in need.
Darle las gracias también al Banco de Madrid, que ha sido el anfitrión, que los ha recibido, que les ha explicado la manera con que los bancos de alimentos gestionan los recursos y los excedentes alimentarios.
To thank as well to the Food Bank of Madrid, which made us a good presentation yesterday.
Y bueno, gracias a todos por estar aquí, por seguir siendo generosos y entre todos buscar un mundo mejor, que creo que es la mejor de las oportunidades de los seres humanos, que es ayudar a todas esas personas que están en situación de precariedad.
And then thank you to all of you for being here, but much more than that, for keep working and making your efforts to help people who need it, and because he says it's the best thing we can do to better this world.
Gracias a todos, muchas gracias y cedo la palabra al presidente de la Federación Europea de Banco de Alimentos, Jack. Muchas gracias.
Thank you to everybody, and give the floor to Jack van der. You may believe I'm going to translate Jack's, but not. I'm not.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished friends, guests, fellow members of the Board of Directors of the European Food Bank Federation, my dear fellow food bankers, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and pleasure to address you at the onset of this annual meeting of our food bank members, organized this year by FEBA in collaboration with the Federación Española de Banco de Alimentos, which I would like to thank again for their outstanding support and organization. When deprived people hurt in Europe, the whole of Europe is hurting. What has happened to our goals for the 21st century? Weren't we supposed to significantly erode the impact of poverty on our societies? Whilst this procession of misery swells every month, in the EU, 59 million tons of food waste, which is equal to 131 kilos per inhabitant, are generated annually, with an associated market value estimated at 132 billion euros. Eurostat estimates that around 10% of the food made available to EU consumers at retail, food services, and households may be wasted. At the same time, in 2022, 8.3% of the EU population could not afford a quality meal every second day. One of the three ambitious EU targets of the European Pillar Social of Rights is to reduce by at least 15 million the number of people at risk of poverty or social exclusion. On July 5 this year, the European Commission published a proposal on legally binding targets for food waste. More specifically, member states are required to take the necessary measures to reduce food waste by the end of 2030, by 10% in processing and manufacturing, by 30% jointly at retail and consumption, restaurant, food services, households. If one looks at the year 2008, that was, I don't know if you remember, the great global financial crisis year. In that year, record agricultural production was registered. And in the same time, record for the number of persons experiencing hunger was also recorded. This kind of paradox needs to be analyzed in light of the agricultural and food production policies adopted by the states, by states' unions, and by the agri-food business. Society and world evolution are shaping the expectations of and from the food banks. Food banks adapt to this evolving world, and so does our federation. We have had endless crises and challenges in the past years. Brexit, the economic uncertainties on world trade relations, the Ukrainian war, the COVID crisis, the emergence of particularism in various European countries, the need for a new European defense policy, the never-ending flow and the highest in Europe recent history of political and economic refugees, the dramatic increase in cost of living and its attendant misery, to mention a few. The climate crisis, affecting every continent, requires the efforts of everyone, large and small, individual and collective, if we want to leave our children and grandchildren with a living and livable planet. Tomorrow, we celebrate the 4th International Day of Awareness on Food Loss and Waste. What have we done to materialize this awareness? How effective are we in making our communities sensitive to the issue? I really believe that your presence here today in Madrid bears testimony to the importance of the role of food banks in our countries and regions. The European Food Bank Federation is a network of 351 food banks in 30 European countries, preventing food waste and reducing food insecurity. In 2022, FEBA members redistributed over 876,000 tons of food to 44,884 charitable organizations and assisting 12.4 million deprived persons, thanks to the professionalism of 97,940 co-workers, 93% of them being volunteers. This is 78 food banks more, 7 countries more, 6 million assisted persons more than 5 years ago. You can give yourself a big round of applause. Let us look at the FEBA founding fathers' intentions. They wrote, "Our challenge is to reconcile our members' specificities, to guarantee the coherence of their actions in the respect of their founding values, to unite their forces for the recognition of national food banks by private and public organizations, able to assist them and to influence collective decisions towards an optimal use of food surpluses." These words, simple on the surface, tell us the ambivalent role of FEBA. On the one hand, the necessity to work in close relations with each member to ensure the coherence of food banking in Europe, and on the other hand, to develop into a powerful tool able to influence collective decisions. There could be no doubt about the fact that food availability, and this means food systems, is a political feature of note. Look at the determination with which the Russian Federation is attempting to destroy the agricultural fabric of Ukraine. Food and food insecurity have become one of the crucial points in political exchanges today. The activities and networking sessions that will take place today and tomorrow are precisely aimed at fostering the necessity to work in close relation with each other, each one, to listen and express opinions, but also to exchange experiences in the enactment of our mission. Is the work of food banks sustainable? If one believes the very serious work made by scientists on the social return on investment, there is no doubt that our action may have an impact on 8 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Let us share our knowledge, our enthusiasm, our empathy, our generosity and our willingness to teach and to learn, to talk and to listen, to work and to relax during those 2 days. I would fail in my duties if I did not properly introduce the participants to our annual convention. And I may mention that we have extended our support to allow the participation of a minimum of 3 persons per member, the objective being obviously that more food bankers can actually attend these events. So I will now call country by country, and I would like that we communicate our enthusiasm by applauding the members who will raise at the call of their country. So the delegation from Albania. Austria. Belgium. The Czech Republic. Estonia. France. Germany. Greece. Hungary. Ireland. Italy. Lithuania. Luxembourg. Malta. Moldova. The Netherlands. North Macedonia. Norway. Poland. Portugal. Romania. Serbia. Spain. Switzerland. Ukraine. United Kingdom. We are sad not to have our colleagues from Bulgaria, Denmark, Slovakia, and Slovenia with us. I would like also to salute our distinguished guests, our partner VFN, the Global Food Banking Network, Lisa Moon, who is also a member of the FEBA board. Tom Arnold is a member of the GFN board and our keynote speaker today. Mr. Jens Johnson from the Swedish City Mission. General Mills, our staunch partner for many years, is today represented by Mr. Jonathan Bennett. He is the European External Relations Director. And I would like also to greet our most distinguished representatives of companies who stand by our side. Thank you for those who are with us in Madrid today, from CHEP, Sodexo, and Tetra Pak. Finally, I am fantastically pleased to thank the European Commission for its incredible support, not only for this event, but for most of our activities year after year. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. My fellow colleagues, members of the FEBA Board of Directors, and I wish you an excellent and informative annual convention in this beautiful city of Madrid. I would like now to ask you to stand up all for the European anthem, which traditionally signals the start of our annual convention. And I now declare the FEBA Annual Convention 2023 officially open. Thank you. I'm now pleased to introduce you to Mr. Jonathan Bennett, as I just said, European External Relations Director for General Mills. Please.
Well, Jacques, thank you very much. As someone from the UK, I feel slightly sheepish taking the stage immediately after the European anthem, but thank you for having me, and buenos dias to everyone. Good morning. So, I'm delighted to be here representing General Mills and to be the sponsor again for this conference. Some of you may remember that I spoke in Berlin last year. I think it's worth noting that we have sponsored FEBA for many years, and indeed national associations, so we are not new to this world. Unfortunately, when I was reflecting on Berlin and thinking about where we are today, and I note that the title of the conference last year referenced a crisis. Unfortunately, I think the situation we're in now might still be deemed as such. And as we recover from COVID, as we face the tragedy of the war in Ukraine, and now the cost of living crisis that makes headlines all over Europe, we all know too well that the situation has not improved. When I was thinking about what I'd say this morning, though, I didn't want to tell you something you already know. I think you know better than me that needs are increasing, that the situation is very, very difficult. So I thought I'd just say a few words from a company perspective, from a corporate perspective, and things perhaps you do recognize, perhaps you don't. First of all, I wanted to say that we are sincerely proud. We are sincerely proud of our partnership with FEBA. We are sincerely proud of the partnerships we have with national associations in France, in Greece, in Ireland, in the UK, indeed here in Spain. It really means a lot to us, and you know, I'm humbled to be here. You know, Angela told me last night, she said, unfortunately, you won't be able to make any remarks with the Queen because she cannot share a platform with any company lest she's be seen to kind of endorse us, which I completely understand. But for me, really, the true privilege is to be here with you today. So thank you for the opportunity. I think I'd also reflect that you know, I've had the privilege of visiting some of your operations across Europe this year, and I think what's apparent to me, whatever the location is that food means more. Whether it's the skills gained by volunteers working in your warehouses, whether it's the self-worth that comes through having a decent home-cooked meal, or whether it's the education that is more easily acquired because a child is not hungry. I sincerely believe that the work you do is more about sustenance. It truly strengthens the fabric of our European society. And I want you to know that we believe that and we see that, and we are here to support you. I think also I'd like to say we can do more. Together we can do more, whether that's through awareness, through policy, through work in our supply chains. I think we all have a role to play, and that collaboration will be key in order to further our aims and to help more people in need. So I would encourage you to consider companies and the private sector as you develop your plans and as you think about what more we can do over the course of the next few days. And finally, a very simple thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everything you will do. As I say, this partnership and our partnerships at a local level mean a lot to our business. From the factory floor through to the managing director, we can't talk enough about what it means, and it really engages our employees to know that through our partnerships with yourselves, we are making a difference to Europe and the people of Europe. So thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't stay for the entire convention, but I wish you a very successful meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan, for your words, and thank you for being with us today. And now for me, it's really a pleasure to introduce Ms. Ruth Pazerman, who is Director at DG Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion at the European Commission. So Ms. Pazerman is connected online from Brussels, and so hopefully let's hope that technology works. We did the test, so she should be able to join us online.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, we can hear you. Just a second. And now we can also see you. So, perfect.
Okay, very good.
Great.
Thanks a lot, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to the annual conference. The topic of the convention are European food banks at a critical crossroads. I think is very topical and very important. And we really are, as previous speakers have said, in a changing times after a series of successive crises. And we really, perhaps it is right that we take the time to evaluate the needs and the instruments to build sustainable and fair society for the most disadvantaged people in the EU. The social and economic effects linked to the COVID crisis, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, they have all amplified and exacerbated pre-existing social inequalities. A rising number of people across Europe have begun to fall into food poverty and are increasingly reliant on food banks and similar services to meet their basic needs. So in this context, I would really like to highlight the invaluable and relentless work of your member organizations, that you've had really to face increasing pressure to support the most deprived. The work you have done to expand the membership by creating food banks, new food banks, where they were most needed, is really particularly important in the current situation. Now I would like to recall a bit the European Union's policies in this area. The European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan provides for an EU-wide framework for tackling poverty with targets and clear actions. And it sets the target of reducing the number of people at risk of poverty or social exclusion by at least 15 million people by 2030, and including at least 5 million less children. This is an ambitious target, but we think it is also realistic, provided we return to a good path of economic and social convergence. The action plan also puts forward an integrated approach to address the needs at all stages of life and really targets the root causes and manifestations of poverty and social exclusion. Now, this integrated approach includes various initiatives, of which here I would like to quote the European Child Guarantee, the European Platform on Combating Homelessness, and the EU Framework on Minimum Income. These are all initiatives which are closely linked to the concerns of the groups, which are addressed by the FEAD and the ESF+. And of course, we could do more to promote synergies and complementarities, although we already do this. Now, what am I talking about, FEAD and ESF+? You know this, of course. FEAD, the Fund for the European Aid to the Most Deprived, was the available financial instrument in the period 2014, programming period 2014-2020, which is now finishing. And it is continuing in now integrated in ESF+ for the period 21-27. And it is the EU's instrument which targets exclusively most disadvantaged people in the EU. The FEAD, the previous instrument, has provided food and material support every year to almost 15 million people in need, from which almost 30% are children and 11% are elderly people. And this in the period between 2015 and 2022. And so in this sense, it really is an expression of European solidarity in support of a group which is really facing the very basic needs and has real difficulties to access or any other sources of funding at European level. Of course, material support is the first step towards social inclusion, and this can only be achieved with your support and your expertise on the ground. And this is why we think that the collaboration with partner organizations like the ones that you represent is really important. Material support programs can also add value by creating the necessary conditions to build the capacity of all stakeholders, including the organization implementing activities on the ground. Now, for the programming period 21-27, the support for the most deprived is included in the ESF+. There was a minimum target of a minimum requirement that all member states had to spend 3% at least of their national ESF resources on measures to combat material deprivation. In practice, though, when we look at what has been programmed, member states have programmed between 4 and 14% of their ESF budget. So more than was the minimum requirement, and that amounts to overall about 4% of the ESF plus budget. This material support has to be complemented with accompanying measures. Those social actors which are supported by the ESF to facilitate socio-economic integration, access to education, training, and employment. The Commission is still concerned about the rising precariousness in Europe, but it is our firm belief that FED before and the ESF Plus now can make a contribution in alleviating poverty in Europe. And we also believe that your role in this regard is crucial. We're working together for the social inclusion of the most disadvantaged people in Europe, a process that allows those at risk of poverty or social exclusion to gain opportunities and resources to participate fully in economic, social, and cultural life, and to enjoy a normal standard of living and well-being. So, thank you again for your invaluable work. I really wish you a good and fruitful meeting, constructive debates, and we really look forward to continuing our cooperation with you, FEBA, and your members in the future. Thank you.
Don't worry, I'm going to be very short. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Tom Arnold. Tom has a CV that is long like this, so I asked him, what would you like me to say about you today? And so he said, well, not too much. I said, but he's a member of the board of GFN, so we are colleagues there. He's also the Ireland Special Envoy for Food Systems, and he chairs the agri-food strategy up to 2030, also in Ireland. Join me please in welcoming Tom Arnold, our keynote speaker.
Jacques, thank you very much. It's a real honor to be able to speak to you this morning, and I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible over the next couple of days. As Jacques said, I've been involved in this world of food and food systems for many years, but one area I haven't been involved in is the whole area of food banks. So I'm on a steep learning curve at the moment. That learning curve more or less started last December when Catherine Bertini, with whom I served on the board of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, said to me, I'm just stepping off the board of an excellent organization called the Global Food Banking Network. It's an excellent organization, it has an excellent board, and it has an excellent CEO. In Lisa Noon, would you like to join it? So naturally, what could I say but yes? And so I began to get a sense of the wider food banking network at the meeting in Mexico in March, and I was hugely impressed by the level of commitment and professionalism that I saw there. So and I also began to learn a little bit about food banking in practice in Ireland, and I'll speak a little bit more about that later on. But for this morning's talk, I want to talk just about three broad areas. No doubt the system is working, is it? The slides are moving on. Excellent. Yeah, great, well done. Okay, I just want to, as a matter of fact and statistics, just briefly indicate what the growth, oh yes, excellent, that's even better again. What the growth in food banks at global European level has been, and a small example in Ireland. I want to talk about the growing political and policy importance of food loss and waste as an issue, and situate that into the wider context of what's happening in the world, in the strategic world of food at international level. And then briefly to talk about what I think are 5 key issues at this crossroads at which we are speaking about at this meeting. The growth in, these are just statistics which I have gathered from various websites. I hope they're all correct. The GFN is in 44 member countries across 6 continents. It has served, in 2022, 32 million people. And then that's the balance, the majority of those in Asia Pacific, Latin America, and then smaller numbers in North America and Europe, and in Africa and the Middle East. But counting in all for 51,000 local organizations and 400,000 volunteers. Within Europe, and Jacques has already given some of these statistics, 351 food banks in 30 European countries, 12.8 million people in need of food assistance, and which is a 35% increase on pre-COVID levels. This is not news to all of you. I think this is your daily reality. But the actual food distributed, 860,000 tons, which represents a 12% increase in COVID levels. I'm taking the liberty of mentioning Ireland. The organisation that is represented here is Food Cloud. It was started just 10 years ago by 2 remarkable young women, Aoibhinn O'Brien and Iseult Ward. Aoibhinn is here with her colleagues Emer and Karen. And I really just wanted to illustrate, just briefly talk about them, because I think it shows what can be done with enlightened leadership, you know, and very progressive, innovative thinking, to go from a standing start 10 years ago to the organization they have today with a technology platform connecting 500 supermarkets with surplus food, local communities and voluntary groups, and distributed over 100,000 tons of surplus food and 235 million meals. But the key thing for me is that they are looking now to expand their horizons to offer what they have developed and practiced in Ireland in terms of a technology platform to a number of other countries, both in Europe and in Africa. So if you want to learn more about how they did all this, you can talk to them in the course of this meeting. The more central issue I think I want to talk about is this question of how food loss and waste is becoming a more important political issue at European and at international level. And in a way, the anchor point of this growing importance is the Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, and this commitment that by 2030 there should be a halving of per capita global food waste at retail and consumer level, and the reduction in food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. And the other anchor to this growing political importance is the recognition by the UN Secretary General in calling the first Food System Summit in 2021 to say that sustainable food systems, the achievement of sustainable food systems, are at the heart of achieving the SDGs and the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And the significance of this is that, of course, food loss and waste are an integral part of working towards sustainable food systems. So you had the summit in 2021, and just in July, you had what was called the UN Food System Summit stock-taking moment, where countries came back 2 years on from many of them making pledges as to how they were going to change their food systems, to say how far they've got in that journey. Now, some of them, of course, had not got as far as they had pledged to get. And there were good reasons for that, the COVID, obviously, and the impact of the invasion of Ukraine. But nonetheless, the issue is there, and it it has become important, and it's my belief it's going to become more important. We're also seeing at the G20 declaration in the G20 meeting in September, there was also an increasing level of reference to food loss and waste. And then important, even more important, I think, is the COP meeting in December, where it is given a high priority on the agenda there, and as part of an overall priority that the UAE presidency has given to the link between policy for climate and policy for food. And that, I think, is a real opportunity for this sector to make its voice heard. And Lisa will be at that meeting doing just that. But I think it comes back more even to all of our individual countries who are preparing to go to COP. And I think connecting into national programs for that are really important. Now, I want to talk about the issues, the 5 issues, what I think are at the crossroads. And these are what I want to talk about. Firstly, building on success. Secondly, to try to ensure that food loss and waste is an integral part of food systems and food systems transformation that is happening at many country level. The whole role of the circular economy is becoming more important, and there has to be a role for food loss and waste in that regard. The need for new partnership models, as this gap between the needs of the population for food and the capacity of the food bank sector to cope with that is becoming increasingly challenging. And in that context, the need perhaps to look for new partnership models, particularly with government. And then finally, spreading the message, what the future growth ambitions of this movement should be. Building on success. I'm very conscious that you have already some very significant assets to go on. My main sense is that you have in this movement a mixture of, if you like, magic ingredients, which when they work together as effectively as possible can do great things. And those magic ingredients are volunteer commitment, in many cases, I think very professional management, the connections you have with local communities and people, and commitment to innovation and learning from each other. All of these things, I thought, were very well reflected in the meeting, in the site visit we made yesterday to the Madrid Food Bank. So you have a starting point of real value, and the question is, you assess how you can best build on that value. The second part, have I done something wrong? Go back. Yeah, okay, I keep going, I think. The second part is that there is no doubt that the whole movement of the UN Food Systems Summit has created a new context for your work. The main outcome of the UN Food Systems Summit 2 years ago was that a number of commitments, a number of countries committed to going down what they call national pathways for food systems transformation. So they acknowledged that they had to change their own food systems. And increasingly, a number of people see that the whole area of food waste, loss and waste is sufficiently important within their own national situations that it deserves proper acknowledgement within a national plan. So that's the opportunity I think this movement has. And then the challenge is, how does that get translated into national policy? Just acknowledging it isn't going to be enough. You're going to have to build relationships with key officials and key politicians to make sure that this food loss and waste gets properly expressed and is given proper importance within national policies. And then, as I said earlier, I think the upcoming COP presidency, or the COP meeting in December, is of particular relevance here. The circular economy is in many, both at EU level and in many European countries, developing a real policy momentum. That's based on the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce biodiversity loss. And so there is another opportunity here for the movement to engage in the emerging policy debate at EU and at national level. And part of that is going to perhaps be about how you connect with farmers by connecting growers with surplus produce to local community groups. We had a very interesting discussion about that yesterday, about how it happens here in Spain. But of course, again, every country is going to be different, and the opportunities will be there in some countries and much more difficult in other countries. But again, it's an area where there should be, real learning from each other, from across this movement of 30 European countries as to what can be done. New partnerships with government. I mean, it was referred to in earlier contributions by Jack and others, that COVID and the cost of living have increased the number of people seeking support from food banks, and at the same time resources are decreasing. So there has to be the basis for constructive discussion between food banks and governments to see how that gap can be bridged, how the two sectors, the food banking sectors and the government sector, can work together in a way that's strategic, structured and long-term. But again, there's nothing automatic about this. This is a case of solid relationship building with key people, and if that's not already in place, you have to start it and build on it and realize that it will take time. And then the final comment I make is that you spreading the message. The record you have built up over decades at this stage, and the credibility that brings, means that there is going to be a growing role in a growing number of countries for food banks. How can that be brought about? I know that GFN strategic plan up to 2026 foresees a goal of improving food access for 50 million up by 2030. So what's the European perspective about future development within Europe and future possibilities be? And again, the rest of the programme over today and tomorrow, I think, gives a chance to talk about this. And of course, at the back of all this, we have, as referred to by Jack at the beginning, the tragic circumstances of Ukraine and how this movement can help the people of Ukraine who live in Ukraine and increasingly people from Ukraine who live elsewhere. So that's my short attempt at attempting to set the scene for you over the next day and a half, and I really wish you all the best in your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to have a change of pace. We're going to have a change of tack. Can you all stand up, please? Can you all get, in whichever hand, your left or your right, that you normally write with, can you get your pen? Can you get a blank sheet of paper in the other one? Can you hold them up? Right, wiggle them about and sit down again. Right, why have I just done that? This next session is about you, not me talking at you. You are going to participate. We've got 3 microphones, and shortly, and I will buy a drink to the person who kicks us off with the first contribution. Could be at lunchtime, could be this evening, depending on what your appetite is. But because it's always difficult for the first person, I'm going to say some introductory remarks and comments, and then we're going to get into the real meat of why we have all invested so much time, when time is so precious, to be together for the next couple of days. We've got a session now. We've then got a series of breakout sessions where we're going to get into some real granular ideas and knowledge sharing, and then we come back together again for a further session. And now, the reason for the pen and paper is, in this session, or the other plenary session that we've got later on, where we look at some of the sort of future workings, if you think of something that you feel that FEBA should be doing on your behalf, I want you to write it really clearly on that paper. I want you to fold that paper. You can put your name on it so that we can follow up if you want to. If you want to be rude and be anonymous, you may do that, obviously. And then when, at the end of this session, as we all go to the breakout sessions, I want you to just come and put it on the stage here. Okay? So as we go along, capture and write those things down. Tom has brilliantly given us some of the strategic context and the strategic challenges. I want to now build on some of that and begin to look at, actually, what is the world in which we all work and operate at the moment, and what are you telling each other? Now, a brilliant place, I think, to start was that fantastic presentation from the highly experienced chief executive of the Madrid Food Bank yesterday, where she took us through the reality of the situation that is happening here in Madrid. And essentially, what they have seen is a fantastic, if you take it in isolation, a fantastic performance in that if you go from the amount of food that was being redistributed in Madrid in 2019, and you look at today, it's a 23% increase. However, the reality is that's quite a considerable decrease from the height of the pandemic crisis. And many of the organizations that receive food have got used to receiving certain types of food and certain volumes of food, and are also faced with many more people knocking on their doors at the moment. And that's the world in which you all work and we all work and operate in. We send out a very quick survey to you all, very, very simple, very headline. One member country said that the demand for food was going down. 6 said it's roughly around about the same as it's always been. But everybody else said demand is going through the roof, and are really struggling to keep up with that. There was a real common thread to the fact that food at a supermarket level has disappeared, or is disappearing rapidly. And that's because in the inflation world in which the retailers work and operate, they are looking at other ways that they can monetize their surplus or eliminate it in the first place. Everybody reported an increase in the cost of services. The bills going up, the cost of fuel to either run the warehouses, the rental of the warehouses, and so on. Interestingly, quite a common theme occurring right through as a little sort of idea, and this is the sort of thing that we can plug connect people together on this, is quite a few of you said there is money out there for capital projects, and we're sticking solar panels on the roof of the warehouses that we own in order to cut our fuel bills. 6 different countries are doing that at the moment. So that's quite an interesting, little point. There's more, or there's greater reliance. Those of you who are from national federations, you're seeing and I've identified that your food banks are looking at you more and more and more for funding in particular. And so there is the squeeze at a national level. And alongside that, many countries are reporting that there is a, and I'm going to insert the word perceived. There is a perceived fatigue in funding our work. We'll explore later why I've been controversial and said perceived. Our customers have changed, you're telling us. What you're telling us is that they got really used to redistributing the types of food that isn't surplus, that goes into a long life food parcel, particularly long life carbohydrates. And when we then start trying to give them fresh produce, when they're no longer doing a cooking facility, they turn around and go, we don't want that. And so there is this challenge of what is surplus and what is available, and that balance and that provision. And again, that was talked about yesterday in the presentation in Madrid. And indeed, I was really interested and pleased to see that there was some leadership work in terms of going, are we giving food to the right organisations? And we will come back, we will absolutely come back to that as well. Many of you are really focusing on looking further back in the supply chain. So when we've got the breakout sessions, we've got sessions that are looking at manufacturing, we've got sessions that are looking at extending life on products, and we've got sessions that are looking at the farm to fork, going right back to the farmer's field. And all of the data tells us, in no matter which country we work in, that is where the real volumes of surplus are. It's at the growing stage. That's the summary of what collectively you've all told us. But what I'd like to do now is try and just bring that to life a little bit by just getting various different individuals to just be able to talk about the experiences that you have in your countries. Feel totally free to start going into some of the strategy that you're putting into place in order to try and counter that. But bear in mind that we've got these breakout sessions taking place in half an hour's time or so. Now, who wants a free drink? Who's going to be the first person to talk about what's happening in their country? Because this is the bit where I sit here going, oh my God, is anybody going to contribute? UK, you would never think this was a stitch-up, would you? Alison, I'll buy you a drink later.
Is it? Just checking that works.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Well, first of all, my boss, and secondly, free drink, obviously. So I'm really interested, and I suppose reassured, that our experiences in the UK are so similar to the majority of the survey answers, because for each one of those conclusions, I was hearing tick, tick, tick. So what we started to do a couple of years ago, and this is one of the strategies, and we'll talk about it in one of the breakout sessions, was to try and go further up the supply chain, particularly get to farm gate level, but find ways of maximising the product. And we started doing quite well with that. We created a fund that would help offset the costs for the farmers. So if they needed the bags, if they needed the labour, if they needed materials to help do the harvesting, we gave them some money. It wasn't paying for the product, it was just making it cost neutral for them to do the things that would otherwise mean that the product would stay in the ground. Now, unfortunately, the increase of cost on energy for the charities that we support means that giving them big, heavy vegetables that they have to cook in the oven for 40 minutes or whatever isn't actually desirable. And then they don't want to give that to the individuals who are going to their charities. So the challenge for us was to turn that into product. And so we've gone through 5 or 6 pilots now of freezing, putting product into cans, juicing, freeze drying. There was another one, I'll have to remember what it was. And we've done it on a small scale pilot, and we've worked out whether it's valuable from a financial point of view, whether it extends the life. But because we've had this idea of to go further back into the supply chain, but what we could get wasn't actually that attractive to the charities or the people, we've then had to find another process on top. And that comes down to money. So we're just at the process now of working out whether we've made the most expensive can of soup ever, or whether actually we can sponsor it, or at larger scale we can make it more viable. So that will be one of the things that I'll be sharing in one of our breakout sessions, which is about extending the life of the product, because we've got some good results now. Is that a good starting point?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Given that I raised the issue of particularly what's happening at supermarket level, and whilst I know the Irish delegates are representing Food Bank Ireland, but there's a healthy dose of founder knowledge of Food Cloud, and therefore there's a lot of knowledge of what's happening in trends at supermarket level. Have you got any insights that you could share around what is actually happening?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. That was very loud. Hi, I'm Even from Food Cloud. So what we're seeing in an Irish context, we work with Tesco, Lidl, Aldi, Dunnes, so most of the major supermarkets, and we have done for 10 years. So for some of the supermarkets, we're definitely seeing a decline in volumes. So that means for a charity going to the store, there's still food, but it's a smaller volume. So obviously the cost of getting to the store to pick up a smaller, less diverse, and that's for the main reason that we're seeing is that the reduced to clear aisles in the supermarkets are more popular given the cost of living crisis. So I'd say the volume, while the number of donations that we have seen has risen, the number of donations collected has risen, the size and the diversity of the actual donation for the charity has gotten smaller. So it means that they might have to go to 2 or 3 stores to get the same as they were getting from one store pre-COVID, for example. What we're also seeing is, I know there's other for-profit companies in the space, but we have one example where Too Good To Go has come on board with Aldi. In an Irish context, we also work in the UK, and we support the Czech Republic and Slovakian food banks, but they might have a different experience. When Too Good To Go came on board at the start of this year, we were a little bit concerned in terms of volumes, but we've actually seen an increase in the amount of food donated from that retailer because they're more focused on the process. So we thought we'd see a decrease when Too Good To Go came in, but we actually have seen a 300% increase from that store. So that was quite interesting because ultimately the store is being more process driven, and then rather than forgetting to do their donation, which may not have been as a big issue for the store managers, now it is because it's linked to a whole other process. So that has been interesting for us this year as well, that it's not necessary that the for-profit companies, you know, we can do it right and in a collaborative enough way that there may be benefits. However, we were also concerned that say for example, the Too Good To Go would get the good stuff and that the charities would be left with the bakery. And so we're monitoring that carefully to see if that is the kind of lived experience from the charities.
But the early days experience of that isn't the case.
The early days experience now, we do need to keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
That started in February this year, so we're keeping an eye on it as it evolves. But in terms of overall tons of food moved from a relatively low base, so some retailers are better than others in terms of donating the food. We've gone up 300% since Too Good To Go have come on board with that retailer. So it's just, but we definitely are seeing, are actively working on, could our platform be used at farm level? So we're doing the same as everybody here, looking at increasing, moving, looking at Nando's and KFC have come on board, so that's food service, and diversifying, because retailers are going to have really big targets on food waste reduction. So I think for organizations like ourselves, we need to be continuously evolving and seeing if there's different ways, that we can access further back the supply chain as well, or in different like food service, right back to farm manufacturing and product, and how can we do that as efficiently as possible?
Okay. So one of the fun things, and we knew this would be the case when we put this program together, is in terms of having a session initially that looks at actually what's happening, it's inevitable that we then get into, and what are some of the problem areas. So, we're beginning a conversation on competition there. But actually we're going to be looking at competition later on. So rather than going down the rabbit hole that is competition at the moment, I just want to really sort of keep this as a little bit more sort of at a sort of strategy level. Because what both of those contributions so far raise for me is the fundamental question around the balance of our missions. Because for many food banks, and for many FEBA member countries, it's this balance between, there is the environmental mission, which is surplus, and helping avoid surplus by making sure that food is eaten. But it's focused on driving as much social goodness out of that surplus as possible. So there is the hunger side. And I guess what I'd love is some people to contribute is the current environment putting pressure on you to go, do you know what? The increase in the number of people and the cost of living crisis means that we are focusing more on the social work and less on the environmental work. And so we don't care as much whether it's surplus or not, because we've got hungry people. Tom, thank you, Netherlands.
Thank you. I think you raise a point that's also discussed in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, in the past, we said the food bank has two goals, and the goals are at the same level: avoiding food waste, helping poor people. Yesterday, I heard in the presentation that here in Spain, they had also a discussion, and it changed a little bit. And the same discussion we have in Holland. So I think that in the past, it was avoiding food waste, helping people. I think that nowadays we say we want to help people and make use as much as possible the food of food waste, but in addition, we are also doing other things, like buying, and so on. And I really think that on strategic level, that's a change which is going on. And I'm very curious if that discussion is also in other countries.
So can we stick to this strategic issue, and can other countries now contribute? What discussions you are having? Who wants to go next? You must be talking about this, guys. You must be. Otherwise, I'm going to pick some folk out. Sorry. Yeah. Can you introduce yourself and your name and your country?
Yes, my name is Balázs, and I'm coming from Hungary. We of course have the same discussion, but we still stick to the middle. So we say it's important for us to find more food surplus and help people in need with this food surplus. And we still believe there is a lot of food out there, and we believe the buying food or being a food aid organization is a playground of other organizations like Caritas, Red Cross, and some others. And where we are unique, and we are the only ones who are still looking for more food surplus. And this is our core mission, that we still have to look for new ways to find food. And just give you 2 examples or 3. One, you mentioned data shows that there is a lot of food surplus in agriculture. We have tried to find it, but we still don't see it in Hungary. But we also see the data. So that's an issue. How can we find the food surplus in the agricultural sector, which data shows it is there? Or the other thing, we are now trying to enter into the hospitality sector, and also we see what's happening in Ireland. This is a little bit different in Hungary, because we already see a clear decrease in the volumes from the retail sector. So a Too Good To Go type of organization entering the market, and also retailers starting to discount is resulting in a significant decrease in the volumes in the retail. Thereby, we are ending up in a number of stores having lower quantities than charities would want to pick up. If there is only 20 kilograms in a store, no charity wants to go and pick it up. So thereby, we are testing a new model, because traditionally we started food banking via warehousing. Then we went to a next level with a direct distribution when we facilitate, so we create the connection between charities and supermarkets, and then they go and then pick it up. And we see now a 3rd level of the model, which is similar to the Too Good To Go type of activities, that we would like to create a system where individuals go and pick up food from small stores or from restaurants or bakeries with a similar type of structure that Too Good To Go does, with the exception that it is for free, and the users are only able to access the system if they are managed by the charities, so that they get the access to the system by our charities. So it would be a system only for people in need, and would be a kind of a free type of Too Good To Go system. So summarizing, we still stick to the middle, and we see a number of opportunities where we still have to grow, but it requires time and effort, because these are not easy ways to go.
Alex, thank you very much. Good night. Thanks.
Hey, Christian Rom from Norway. We have very little donation of food. We get, but we have had like 2 or 3 incidents during Christmas time where we accepted pure donations, because the situation is in Norway is that the demand for food and food aid is increasing very much. We hand out more food, we collect more food than ever before. We have had an increase this year in 20%, I think. Last year we had 35% increase in the food all over. So we're getting more and more food, but still the demand for food is increasing more. And we have 2 main strategies to get more food. The one is the legislation way, because we want to have we want it to be mandatory for all food business to have a plan for the food waste, and where donation of surplus food should be one of the measures, and it should be mandatory. So we are now cooperating very close with the government and the whole food business to make that suggestion. And we think that that will really increase donation. So that is the main strategy. The second strategy is to go further down in the supply chain, so we go directly to the farmers. It's just starting up, but the idea is that we collect directly from farmers, and then they lower the cost. So we come and collect hard vegetables that we sort on the packaging lines, and then we distribute between the food banks. But we are lacking proteins, and we are now looking into different kind of animals that are not used for food. For instance, hens that are laying eggs, and goats. They are just thrown away in Norway because of the costs of butchering them. So we are now discussing a cooperation with one of the biggest retailers that they pay for the cost of butchering, and we get the proteins. So that's the two strategies that we have.
While somebody else comes in, just building on that, in the UK, there is a separate organisation that deals with particularly food from the culling of deer. In our forests, there needs to be over 1 million deer killed every single year just to keep the deer stocks healthy. Otherwise, there would be an overpopulation, and illness would kill many, many more. And of course, venison is a very, very good source of protein. So exploring those sorts of relationships.
Ryan,
so I couldn't see, you've got a light right behind your head. So
perfect.
It looks a little bit like a halo, which Ryan is slightly disconcerting. Germany, do you want to...
It just kind of builds on what Even and Balish were saying as well. We've seen a decrease in donations from retail, but for us, that's quite, I think it's around 80% of the food that we get.
Say the percent again?
It's around 80% of the food we get is from supermarkets, retail. So we have seen a decrease because of the reasons that were already named, like increased competition and the monetization or like selling of products at a reduced price. But at the same time, it gives us points of contact directly with the customers at the supermarkets as donors. When they donate their bottles, we get the money. And when when Lidl sells the products at a reduced price in kind of a mixed bag for €3, they also make a financial donation to the Tafel. So that kind of helps us because it's ideologically difficult to tell the supermarkets, don't sell those products, give them to us. So it's a good solution to that we get a financial incentive for them to sell the food.
And roughly how much gets raised through the Lidl?
It's a new model, and I don't know, but it's a lot. I mean, it's significant. It's hundreds of thousands of euros.
What?
Huh? 1.5 million per year.
Euros. So 1.5 million euros is raised.
Because we get a portion, I think it's like 10 cents for each mixed bag that's sold through Lidl. So that's one way to compensate for the food loss. At the same time, money is not the same as food, but that's the other part of this, is that we at the National Association are trying to pivot to get more donations from other sectors like retail or agriculture, but we need a different infrastructure to do that. But that's where the money comes back in to help us be able to digitize our processes and things like that. So it is risky, or it is a big challenge, but it's also increasing the role of the National Association in Germany in food acquisition for all of our members, because it has been traditionally very decentralized, mostly from retail, and we're kind of trying to make a shift to get more food from different sectors in support of our 1,000 food banks.
So is that changing the dynamics between the Tafel's central organization and all of your members?
Yeah, I think both our role in passing out more funding and as well as passing out more food has definitely increased our standing and the importance of us as a head organization to our membership, for sure. Yeah.
So if I was a delegate sat in this room now, I would have written on my piece of paper, if Lidl in Germany are selling food in food bags, which from a supermarket's perspective, they exist to sell food, you're just selling short-dated food at a discounted price to your customers. Why wouldn't you do that? It's a sensible commercial thing to do. but that is putting funding back into the food banks. Now, I don't think any other Lidl in any other country is doing that.
I think there's one other country.
In Austria. Is that happening? No. Italy, sorry, yeah. Austria's in front of you. I knew Austria was here somewhere. Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps
Jeff.
I can tell the Belgian experiment. We started together with Lidl 4 years ago. The same model as in Germany. And we got money, and we get money, but we have to buy products of Lidl. This has an advantage that we can choose the variety. If we need more protein, we can buy products with higher protein. So it is a very positive experience. And to give you an idea, in comparison with Germany, Belgium is much more smaller, but we receive an average 300,000 euros per year. So I think it's a very good model, and that allows us to have high quality products. What is not sure if you have surplus food.
And what's interesting about that is if you've got lots of fruit and veg, but you haven't got much protein or carbohydrate, you can make the fruit and veg go further by a purchase intervention.
Yeah.
So it isn't as black and white as surplus is good, buying is bad. There's nuance in that. What I was going to say is I would have written on my piece of paper now, FEBA, I want you to get every Lidl across the membership of FEBA to do the same thing. And that's what it would be on my piece of paper up the front here. Because if Lidl is doing it in Belgium and in Germany, and I'm going to ask Italy to comment in a moment, but they're not doing it in, for example, the UK, why not? That seems an obvious thing to do.
No, in Italy we have an experience, we have a special program called City Cibo that is for collecting food from restaurant or distribution, great distributions, 2 big channels. And we are investing a lot on this program because particularly in the channel of the distribution, because just for giving you a number, we are collecting now food from 1,900 supermarkets, but in Italy there are 22,000 supermarkets. So we have space for growing. And for investing on this special program, the foundation that in Italy, we have a foundation that coordinates all the regional banks. The foundation creates a special funding for the regional banks that can use this money to put potential on this program, using also the support of the local charities to collect from restaurant or to collect from distribution. And this works well, and we see a lot of potential, particularly in the supermarket channel.
So there's a fantastic opportunity.
Yes.
But I guess if I can use a food analogy, it looks like we're slightly at a place as a network where we've managed to very successfully get the low-hanging fruit, which is easy to pick. But if we want to get more, we need to invest. It's going to cost us more, and it's going to be harder work. North Macedonia.
Okay, thank you. Hello for everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to share what we have at the moment. Politically correct North Macedonia, but in Macedonia. We already started a program a year ago where we because as I can notice that we already speak about the supermarkets, about the urban areas, helping people in need. What we speak are taking from the farmers from the rural areas and giving the food to the people in urban areas, which is okay, in supermarkets, etc. But when we speak and how we can speak about the people which live in rural areas. They are also poor. They also need some support. We already started one program a year ago with CBF in Macedonia to provide some amount of money for people, poor families from the rural, give them the kind of possibilities to some materials like chickens, goats, beans they produce for themselves, or give some support to some families to grow in the greenhouses their vegetables. They can share the things, because those people, those families doesn't have material support from the government, and they are kind of forgotten in some rural areas. That's why we started with several families at the moment, and we plan in the next year to have minimum 15 to 30 families, around 200, 250 members, where we can support those families to produce what some of the colleagues say, proteins, eggs or chickens, whatever, honey or milk, whatever, and they will share among themselves, and through the food bank system we can go in the form of social enterprise to establish them, for all of them to establish kind of social enterprise which can guarantee that we are all together and we do care about them, and because it's enough fish, we should teach them to fish, because fish every day will finish, but fishing, teaching them for fishing in future, they will have a fish for every day.
Thank you. Any other national experiences, contexts you want to share? Please, thank you.
Jean-Marie Mortier, Belgium. So in each country there is a decrease of donation, this is clear, but the question is, shouldn't we not give some incentive to the manufacturers or the distribution for improving their donation? And I think first level is tax, reducing VAT on products that are donated. Second level is giving more visibility to the organizations, to the manufacturers or distribution that give products to us. And in another life, I was working in a consumer organization, and good products receive a label certifying that they are good. Can we think giving more visibility to manufacturers and distribution that are giving products to us?
Fantastic. And the point that you make, while the microphone goes back to the lady behind, the point that you make about the tax allows me to give a plug for a piece of work that is a GFN initiative in partnership with Harvard Law School, who have produced the Global Atlas. I don't know whether you're going to reference that tomorrow. So we will learn more about that tomorrow. But that's shining a spotlight on what is the policy position in different countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. So, Yeshim Roy from France. As a founder member of food banks in Europe, so we already tried and implemented different solutions and different offers for our donors, for our partners. As we had the opportunity to discuss with our Spanish colleague or with Balázs about the different technical solutions we can offer to connect directly donors, especially small donors for small quantities or irregular donations, directly with our charities, partner charities. We have a solution called Proxidon, but it raises different challenges, especially in our teams, in food banks teams, because we have to hire specific HR to be able to handle the and to manage the tool all day long, and not only one morning or one afternoon per week. It's not enough, so we need permanent HR. It's the first challenging. The second point I would like to point is that in France we're trying for years now to find how can I say, a balance on the contribution we are asking from the manufacturers, from retailers, from the individual donors, and from the farmers and growers. So how could we make our challenge of tackling food precarity a collective matter and not only our problem, our challenge to tackle, you know? How could we make that everyone in France, either producer or retailer or individual, could contribute at its own scale? So we are developing cause-related marketing operations, proposing different mechanisms and operations in retailing channels to offer the shoppers the opportunity to make a donation or to manufacturers to make a donation through the different operations with visibility, with ads, first one. The second is the solidarity chain from the farmers and growers to the food banks. One example is the milk sector. Growers are called to action by donating raw milk. Then this raw milk is processed by Lactalis, Sodial, or other milk companies. Then it is delivered to the food banks. And the donation is made at the grower level, then at the processing company level, then at the transportation companies level.
Brilliant.
And finally, another solution we try to develop is what we call in France les dons volontaires. So we call the different manufacturers to offer to food banks 0.0x% of their annual production. We are not talking about surplus food, we are talking about planned and voluntary production, especially for food banks. And we are very proud to have some strong partnerships being built on this way. So we can develop it with Nestlé, different companies, that they are willing to give us 1 hour per trimester, per quarter, or 1 day per semester of production, long-lasting products production, to be donated to food banks. So it's also a way to answer the decreasing size of the excess food pie, and just to make sure that we can continue to provide the needed quantities to our beneficiaries.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Right, we're out of time, and we're now going to go through a process. So we're going to be later on all in the room together. Some of the stuff like competition and marketing and fundraising we will be talking about there. But we're going to go into the breakout sessions, the working sessions, now.